I sat at my parents' maple kitchen table, the one where I had done 15 years' worth of spelling drills, math worksheets, and late-night essays. The table surface was scarred with faint grooves from dinner plates and my own furious pen scratches. Tonight, though, it was dressed up like a stranger, polished until it gleamed, set with Mom's delicate china, patterned with fading blue roses and flanked by folded cloth napkins I'd only ever seen at graduations or Easter brunch. "Isn't it nice?" Mom's voice carried a peculiar brightness, like she was auditioning for a commercial. She smoothed her apron twice, then darted glances at Dad. He poured wine with a flourish that bordered on theatrical, refilling my glass before I had even touched it. His old retirement watch caught the chandelier light, flashing like a signal I couldn't quite interpret. Troy sat across from me, shoulders hunched, phone glued to his hand. His thumbs drummed across the screen in bursts, probably firing off fantasy football updates to his college buddies. Jessica, his wife, fussed beside him with surgical precision, cutting their son Mason's chicken breast into exact symmetrical cubes. Mason, 8 years old and restless, pushed green peas into neat mathematical lines. The room should have felt warm: roast beef and mashed potatoes, the gentle clink of silverware, the smell of butter browning. But the air was wrong. It had weight, like a humid storm pressing at the windows before lightning splits the sky. I sipped my wine to disguise a frown. A Tuesday dinner, no birthdays, no anniversaries, no visiting relatives. So rare these days. Mom chirped again, this time too loudly, all of us together like this. Everyone's schedules are so busy. Her voice wavered near the end, and I caught it, that note of strain, as though the sentence had been rehearsed. My pulse quickened. Mom was many things, but spontaneous hostess wasn't one of them. Her earrings pearls reserved only for Sunday church and weddings, dangling tonight for a random weekday meal. Something was off. I glanced between them, waiting. Dad chewed slowly, methodically, eyes flicking toward Troy as if awaiting a cue. Troy finally looked up from his phone, his expression rehearsed into false casualness. And then it happened. Mom dropped her fork with a clatter, too deliberate to be an accident. She dabbed her napkin, cleared her throat. "April," she began, tone sharp with purpose. I froze fork midair. She inhaled like she was about to announce a diagnosis. "We need to talk about something important. About Mason's future." The words landed with the heaviness of wet cement. Mason's future. My nephew, who was right now more interested in arranging peas into constellations than anything else. Dad leaned forward, the chair creaking under his bulk, and slid a manila folder across the polished surface. It landed directly in front of me. The official seal of First Federal Bank glared from the top page. I didn't even need to open it to know this wasn't about dessert. I spread the pages with shaking fingers. Loan paperwork, a co-signing agreement, $40,000. My name already printed in bold font under secondary signatory. My stomach tightened into a fist. "It's just a formality," Troy said quickly, his voice dipped in feigned reassurance. He finally put down his phone, folding his hands in what looked like practiced sincerity. "The bank needs another signature. Someone responsible." The compliment curdled in my ears. Responsible. Translation: the family ATM. Mom reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine with a tremor of rehearsed emotion. "You finally got that bonus, didn't you? Family helps family." Her eyes glistened on cue, the same manufactured tears she'd used when Troy crashed Dad's car and somehow convinced them I should help with the insurance premium. Mason giggled softly, still lost in his pea pattern, completely unaware he'd just been weaponized into the centerpiece of a financial ambush. The roast beef turned to sawdust in my mouth. This wasn't a dinner. This was theater. A stage. Every movement had been choreographed, every prop, china, pearls, wine, and all set into place. And I was the target. Something inside me sank, but another part of me, older, sharper, forged in years of playing second best, began to rise. I forced my face into neutrality, but my chest buzzed with realization. This wasn't just about Mason's college fund. This was about control. They thought they could still script my role in this family drama. They had no idea what was coming. The folder lay before me like a trap disguised in beige. I stared at the top page, the bank's insignia glaring up at me like a smug witness. My own name printed neatly in the co-signer box made my stomach knot. It was as if they had already written my part in their play, and all I had left to do was sign on the dotted line. Dad folded his hands, voice calm but edged with command. The interest rate is fair. Mason deserves a solid start. This is just paperwork. His words carried the same tone he'd once used when telling me curfews weren't up for debate. That authoritative finality that used to silence me as a teenager. Troy leaned forward, elbows on the table, his grin just a little too confident. Look, April, you've always been the smart one, the steady one. The bank trusts you. You're the only one who can make this work. His praise, so forced and hollow, hit like a slap. It wasn't admiration, it was manipulation dressed in sibling banter. I flipped through the second page, my hands trembling. My name had been typed in well before tonight. Not a blank line, not an option, an expectation. Mom's hand fluttered toward mine again, but I pulled back. Family helps family, she repeated, her eyes shimmering. She dabbed at the corner of her lashes with a napkin, just as she had countless times in school auditoriums when Troy missed a free throw, her tears as rehearsed as his excuses. Something inside me cracked. A wave of déjà vu surged as my mind flew back to moments when family helps. Family had always translated into April fixes it. April lends the money. April covers the shift. April sacrifices. Across the table, Jessica adjusted Mason's plate, chiming in with sugary sweetness. Think about it, April. It's for Mason. He's such a bright boy. Imagine him at a top university one day. You'll be the reason his future shines. Her words were dipped in honey but cut like barbed wire. It wasn't about Mason, it was about using Mason as a shield. I glanced at the boy, his tiny hands rearranging carrots into a tic-tac-toe board. Completely innocent. Completely unaware he'd been weaponized as an emotional pawn. A buzzing sound filled my ears, drowning out Mom's high-pitched reassurances and Troy's smug rationalizations. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat screaming a single truth. This was planned. The wine, the china, the random Tuesday night, the overly polite small talk before the reveal. Every detail was deliberate, designed to corner me. I forced myself to speak, my voice tight. I need time to think about this. Troy's jaw clenched just for a second before his smile snapped back into place. The appointment is Thursday morning. 2 days. It'll be quick. Just sign and you'll never have to think about it again. Thursday. They'd already scheduled the meeting. My frown deepened. 2 days. Without even asking me first. Dad's fork clinked against his plate. His eyes hardened, voice dropping to that old steel tone. This is what families do. They sacrifice. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Mom leaned in her pearl earrings, swaying under the light. After everything we've done for you, April, this is such a small thing to ask. I nearly laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that caught in my throat. Everything they'd done for me. My mind spun through memories, the scholarships I'd earned alone, the jobs I'd worked after school, the loans I'd paid without help. My parents hadn't lifted a finger. I swallowed hard, pushing back from the table. The chair scraped loudly against the polished hardwood. Excuse me. Bathroom. Mom reached for me again. April. But I was already walking away, clutching the banister as I climbed the stairs. My reflection in the hallway mirror caught me mid-step, pale face, wide eyes, lips pressed thin with the effort of holding back everything I wanted to scream. Behind me, the dining room buzzed in hushed voices. Troy whispering to Jessica, Dad murmuring to Mom. Their tones carried a single message. They were losing control of the script. In the upstairs bathroom, I locked the door, leaning against the sink. Cool porcelain under my palms grounded me, but the air felt suffocating. My chest heaved. It wasn't just alone. It wasn't just about Mason's future. This was about being cornered into carrying the family once again. This was about being ambushed, manipulated, and dismissed like always. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of defiance strong enough to break the cycle. The bathroom tiles were cool beneath my feet as I leaned against the sink, breathing hard. Their voices downstairs filtered up through the air vent, muffled, tense, scheming, but in my head, another set of voices rose, louder echoes of my childhood. I was 16 again, fluorescent pharmacy lights buzzing above me as I counted pills into bottles. While my classmates laughed at football games and homecoming dances, I was memorizing chemical formulas in the break room during my 30-minute dinner. I can still feel the sting of powdered latex gloves snapping against my skin, the sharp scent of antiseptic clinging to my hoodie. Every dollar I earned mattered. I was saving for college, for independence, for escape. I remember running my hands over the acceptance letter that arrived one spring afternoon, the letter that promised me a full-ride scholarship. I thought maybe finally they'd be proud. But that night, Mom barely looked up from the stove stirring Troy's favorite spaghetti sauce. "That's nice, dear. Could you set the table?" That was it. No hug, no proud tears, no banner strung across the porch. 2 months later, they threw Troy a college send-off party with 50 guests and a catered buffet. I celebrated my scholarship alone with a single cupcake I bought from the bakery where I worked extra shifts. The cashier looked more excited than my parents did. My throat tightened as I remembered another night Troy's graduation. They pooled money with relatives to buy him a car shining in the driveway with a giant red bow. I stood beside it in the family photo, smiling stiffly, clutching the envelope that had contained a $50 bill. Something practical, Dad had said, as though $50 could balance the scales. I turned on the bathroom faucet, now splashing cold water on my face, watching droplets streak down the mirror. My own reflection blurred, replaced with fragments of memories. Christmas morning. Troy unwrapping the newest gaming console, his squeals echoing through the house. Me tearing into a box of sweaters for school, Mom remarking, "Well, you needed them." My science competition in 10th grade, the one I had begged them to attend. The gymnasium lights my hands shaking as I presented my project to judges. I looked into the stands, scanning desperately for familiar faces. Empty seats where my parents should have been. Later that night, Dad explained calmly, "Your brother had a scrimmage. There will be other competitions." The words still sting 17 years later. I gripped the edge of the sink, grounding myself. It wasn't the money alone. It was the message. Year after year, their actions had carved it into me. Troy mattered more. His wins were family victories. My wins were personal hobbies. His mistakes were forgivable. Mine were invisible. And now here I was again in the same kitchen being asked to bankroll his life once more. Except this time, they'd wrapped it in prettier words, "family helps family," and used Mason, a boy too young to understand, as the bait. The thought made me sick. I dried my face with a hand towel, staring into my reflection. My eyes, dull with exhaustion, sharp with anger, reminded me of someone else. My grandmother. She had raised 3 children alone after Grandpa died, working double shifts in a diner, never asking anyone to save her. She used to tuck me into bed when my parents were out late with Troy at football banquets, whispering, "Your life belongs to you 1st April. Don't let anyone take it." For years I had ignored those words, burying them beneath duty guilt, and hoped that someday my parents would see me. But tonight in that bathroom, I felt them rising again like a heartbeat. I inhaled deeply. Downstairs, the silverware clinked, the murmurs continued, and my future hung on a signature they assumed I'd give. But for the first time in a long time, I felt the stirrings of something dangerous, something powerful, the possibility of saying no. The bathroom was too small for all the emotions swelling inside me. Steam from the faucet fogged the mirror, but my reflection glared back eyes-rimmed, red, jaw-tight shoulders squared like I was bracing for battle. My heart still thundered from the ambush downstairs, but now it was mixed with something sharper. Defiance. I gripped the porcelain sink until my knuckles whitened, grounding myself against the storm inside. "They planned this," I whispered to the empty room. The words sounded strange out loud, but they rang true. Every detail clicked into place. The spontaneous Tuesday dinner, the good China Mom's pearl earrings, Dad's forced charm. None of it was casual. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a staged intervention. And I was the mark. My throat ached, but my grandmother's voice cut through the noise of my panic, as vivid as if she were standing behind me. "Your life belongs to you first." I could still remember her warm hands braiding my hair when I was little, whispering that mantra when I cried about Troy getting the bigger bedroom, the new bike, the endless praise. She had seen it all before. Anyone else did the imbalance. The favoritism, the way my parents leaned on me like a crutch while crowning Troy the family star. I met my own gaze in the fogged mirror. Gran's eyes stared back, determined, steady, brave. Downstairs, a laugh rang out Dad's butt brittle. The others murmured their voices low, conspiring. They expected me to walk back down pen in hand, playing the obedient daughter who cleaned up messes no one else wanted to own. But I wasn't 16 anymore, waiting for scraps of approval. I wasn't a girl celebrating her scholarship with a single bakery cupcake while her brother's party filled the yard. I wasn't the one silently watching Troy unwrap shiny cars and gadgets while I pretended to be grateful for practical gifts. I had paid my way, built my life, earned every inch of ground beneath my feet, alone. And now they wanted me to risk it all $40,000 for a nephew whose college fund they should have started years ago, for a brother who never once offered me help, for parents who saw me as insurance, not a daughter. The unfairness burned, but beneath it something else grew. A quiet clarity, a steel thread winding through my spine. I pressed a towel to my damp face and straightened, feeling the weight of years shifting off my shoulders. No one downstairs expected me to fight back. They were counting on my silence, my compliance, my predictable sense of duty. But maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. I pictured Gran wiping sweat from her brow after another double shift, smiling despite her exhaustion. She hadn't endured all that for me to hand over my independence to people who saw me as a wallet with legs. The decision formed before I even realized I'd made it. Thursday's appointment was already in their calendars, but my answer didn't have to be the one they scripted. I turned toward the bathroom door, pulse steadying. The sink no longer felt like an anchor, but a launch pad. By the time I rejoined them, my face was calm, unreadable. Let them think I was still weighing my options. Let them believe their plan was working. They didn't need to know yet that a very different plan was already forming in my mind. One that was mine. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, half-dressed for work, staring at the glow of my laptop. The coffee beside me had gone cold, untouched. I should have been finishing up notes for the department meeting, but instead, my screen displayed something far more personal, a login record from my company's employee benefits portal. Account accessed Tuesday 6:42 p.m. My breath caught. That was hours before dinner. The IP address listed wasn't mine. My stomach churned as realization dawned. Someone had been digging where they didn't belong, someone close enough to know my credentials, or close enough to ask the right person. My bonus details. That was what they saw. That was how they knew the exact figure down to the cent before I'd even mentioned it to a soul. A tremor ran down my arms. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years, Sylvia from accounting. She answered on the third ring. April Donovan. Wow, it's been ages. What's up? I forced my voice into casualness. Quick question, Sylvia. Does Kathy Moore's daughter still work in IT, Lisa? A pause. Yes, she does. Why? My stomach dropped. Lisa Moore, Mom's best friend's daughter. Lisa, who had grown up in and out of our kitchen like a cousin who sent Mom birthday cards every year who worked in IT security. Of course. Just checking, I said quickly, throat tight. I hung up before she could ask more. My hand shook as I opened a second window, this one to my bank account. The deposits stared back $15,200 posted last Friday. My exact bonus. Exactly what Mom had mentioned at dinner. They hadn't guessed. They hadn't hoped. They knew. I closed my eyes, bile rising. The betrayal felt deeper than the loan papers, deeper than the staged dinner. They hadn't just pressured me, they had spied on me, invaded my privacy. Enlisted outsiders to gather intel on their own daughter, all to orchestrate their ambush. My phone buzzed, jerking me back. Troy. Again. I let it go to voicemail. Then another buzz, Jessica this time. Then Dad. Then Mom. The missed calls piled up like a storm. I opened our muted family group chat, scrolling back weeks. The words hit like punches. Troy. She just got her bonus. Mom confirmed amount. Dad confirmed. Your mother's making her favorite meal. Troy perfect. She won't see it coming. I nearly dropped the phone. They'd planned this entire charade. Each text, each step plotting behind my back like I was the villain in their family play. Anger flared so hot it numbed me. For years I'd felt invisible, overlooked, tolerated only when useful. Now I wasn't just invisible, I was prey. My chest tightened, breath shallow. I stumbled across the room, dragging out the old cardboard box I'd carried through every apartment move. Buried beneath yearbooks and report cards, I found it my childhood diary, its lock broken years ago. I flipped through pages filled with cramped handwriting. May 15th. Mom and Dad bought Troy a car. I got $50 in a card. September 3rd. Missed my science competition because Troy had a scrimmage. Dad said there'll be others. December 25th. Troy got the new computer. I got clothes for school. Page after page. My younger self had documented the favoritism with heartbreaking precision, like gathering evidence no one else wanted to see. And beneath the diary, another folder. My loan papers from college. My name alone. No co-signers, no parental safety net. Just me. I clutched the paper's fury and grief blending into something sharper resolve. This wasn't just about money. This was about a pattern, a family system where I was always the backup plan, the reliable mule who carried everyone else's dreams. Not anymore. As my phone buzzed again with Troy's name, I let it ring out, then whispered to the empty apartment. You picked the wrong sister. By Wednesday, my phone was no longer a lifeline. It was a weapon aimed at me, buzzing relentlessly with calls, texts, voicemails, each one another round of ammunition from my family. I muted notifications, but they found ways around it. Unknown numbers, work lines. Even the lobby phone in my apartment building rang the doorman, apologizing later for a very insistent gentleman who'd asked to be let upstairs. I didn't have to guess. It was Troy. The first message I listened to was Mom's, her voice sticky with rehearsed tears. April, honey, you're overthinking this. It's just a signature. Mason's future is worth it. Please don't be stubborn. The second, Dad's short-clipped commanding. This isn't optional. Thursday morning, 10 a.m. at the bank. Be there. By the fifth voicemail, Troy's mask of charm had slipped into irritation. Stop being difficult, April. Mom's crying all morning. Do you want that on your conscience? I deleted the messages without finishing them. But then the pressure moved from my phone into my workplace. At 10:17 a.m., my HR inbox pinged. Subject employee well-being check. Janice, our HR manager, had written, April, is everything all right? We received a concerning call from a relative saying you're under stress and might need support. My chest tightened, fingers hovering over the keyboard. They had called my office. Not just once, they were weaving me into a narrative of fragility, making me look unstable, difficult, incapable. It wasn't enough to trap me financially, they wanted to sabotage my professional reputation too. Around lunchtime, Margaret from the lab 62, and sharp-eyed, plopped a coffee onto my desk with a sigh. Your brother called the front desk asking if you were in. Something about a family emergency. I told them you were in meetings all day. She raised a knowing brow. Was I wrong? I stared at her stunned. No, you weren't. Good. She sipped her tea, eyes narrowing. Family can be crueler than strangers. Don't let them drag you down. Her words, blunt and seasoned, hit like a lifeline. For the first time all day, my lungs loosened enough to take a full breath. But outside of work, the campaign intensified. Jessica showed up at my door in the evening, her knock precise, polite, insistent. I froze behind the peephole. She stood there in her cream sweater, set hair, perfect as always, holding Mason's favorite toy car in one hand. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. The thought of facing her carefully rehearsed pleas, her soft manipulations, was more than I could handle. My phone buzzed again minutes later, a text from an unlisted number. Ungrateful daughters burn in hell. No sender, no context, just the message. My hands shook as I set the phone down. This was no longer just family tension. It was a siege. At the grocery store the next day, Mrs. Peterson, the woman who had lived 3 houses down from us since I was 5, stopped me in the bread aisle. Her eyes flicked into my cart and narrowed. Your poor mother. She sniffed loud enough for shoppers nearby to hear. Some people remember where they came from, some don't. Shame burned my cheeks. They were poisoning the well, one conversation, one neighbor, one phone call at a time. My reputation, my workplace, even my corner grocery store. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the thought pressed down heavy and suffocating they weren't going to stop. Not until I gave in. But as much as my body trembled, as much as fear curled in my stomach, another truth had begun to take root. If they were willing to go this far, invade my privacy, smear me publicly, try to break me professionally, it only confirmed one thing. I couldn't bend this time, not even an inch. By Sunday morning, the battlefield had shifted from my phone and workplace to the one place I thought might still be neutral ground: church. The heavy oak doors creaked as I stepped inside, hymnal tucked under my arm, the familiar scent of polished wood and candle wax filling my nose. For years, this place had been my refuge. I had sung in the youth choir, volunteered at bake sales, even lit candles at Christmas Eve services when my family barely looked up from Troy's football highlights. But today, the sanctuary didn't feel like a sanctuary. It felt like a stage. April Uncle Roger's voice boomed before I'd even made it to the pews. He clasped my shoulder with exaggerated warmth, guiding me toward the bulletin board where family announcements were pinned up. "Your mother tells me you're struggling to understand family obligations." His grip tightened just enough to sting. Before I could reply, Aunt Cheryl materialized at my other side. Such a shame about Mason, she sighed, her hand fluttering to her chest. So bright, so much potential. Imagine if it went to waste because of pride. Her eyes bored into me, daring me to contradict her. Their words echoed rehearsed like lines from a script. I realized then it wasn't just my immediate family. They had recruited the extended network. During coffee hour, the whispers followed me like shadows. Cousins who barely knew me clucked their tongues. Old neighbors avoided my eyes. Even Pastor Williams cornered me near the hymnal shelf, his voice gentle but laced with judgment. "The good book tells us family comes first, April," he said, resting a hand on my shoulder. "Your parents have prayed about this matter. Extensively. Prayers about my bank account." My pulse throbbed in my ears. How convenient, I thought bitterly, that their faith always aligned with Troy's needs. By the time I left, I felt smaller, like my skin had been scraped thin. My family wasn't just applying pressure, they were building an army of guilt around me. Every eye in that congregation carried the same message: I was selfish. I was ungrateful. I was the problem. That afternoon, an envelope appeared in my mailbox, no return address. The paper inside was stark white, the words typed in bold: "Ungrateful daughters burn in hell." I sat at my kitchen table staring at the note as my hands shook. My own family or someone they had enlisted had sent me a threat disguised as scripture. My chest ached with something beyond fear. It was betrayal so sharp it felt physical, slicing through me. Later that night, Troy called again. Against my better judgment, I answered. His voice was thick with fake emotion. "Mason asked me why Aunt April doesn't love him enough to help with college." The words punched me in the gut. They were dragging an 8-year-old into their battlefield, poisoning him against me. "That's low, Troy," I said, my voice raw. "Even for you. What would Gran say if she saw you being so selfish?" he shot back. Gran. My chest burned hotter. How dare he use her name, her the only person who had ever seen me who whispered, "Your life belongs to you first." "Don't you dare!" I hissed, voice shaking with fury. "Don't you dare use her against me!" There was a pause, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might back down. But then he said it smug as ever. "Thursday, 10 o'clock. The bank is expecting us. Don't embarrass the family." Click. The line went dead, leaving only the echo of my own ragged breathing. My phone slipped from my hand onto the table. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, the weight of the threat, the shame campaign, the manipulation pressing down on me from all sides. But under the fear, under the grief, there was a flicker. Not just anger this time, a seed of resolve. If they wanted a war, I wasn't going to fight on their battlefield anymore. By Monday night, exhaustion had etched itself into every bone of my body. I couldn't step outside without bracing for a neighbor's judgmental glance or another concerned phone call. At work, I kept my head down, yet every buzz of my phone sent adrenaline spiking through my chest. I felt cornered, surrounded, until a notification flashed across my inbox that made me pause mid-breath. Subject: Internal Opportunity, San Francisco Branch Expansion. The email came from HR. My eyes skimmed the words, at first too fast to process. Biomedical Research Associate, Project Oversight, Relocation Encouraged, Deadline Friday. For a moment, my brain refused to connect the dots. Then it clicked. A job. A transfer. 3,000 miles away. A door out of the cage. I reread the description slowly, my pulse quickening with every line. It was perfect, a step up in responsibility. A raise. The kind of opportunity people dreamed of. And more importantly, it was escape. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glow of the screen, the rest of the world falling silent around me. My family was orchestrating an ambush that culminated on Thursday at 10 a.m., but Friday's deadline dangled like a lifeline. If I acted quickly, I could vanish before they even realized I was gone. That night, after pacing my apartment like a caged animal, I pulled down the cardboard box from my closet, the same one I had rifled through when I'd found my diary. I dug deeper beneath old essays and photographs until I reached the yellowed envelope I had carried with me through every move. Gran's letter. The paper trembled in my hands as I unfolded it, her familiar cursive looping across the page. Your life belongs to you, 1st April. Choose wisely who gets pieces of it. Love doesn't demand bankruptcy of spirit or wallet. The words hit differently now, not as comfort but as command. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. For years I had stayed endured, hoped my parents might change. But Gran's voice reminded me what I had always known: staying only gave them more power. The decision crystallized before I even realized it had formed. I would apply. Tonight. By midnight, my application was submitted, resume updated, cover letter typed with trembling hands, references double-checked. I sat back, chest heaving, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something I hadn't felt in years: possibility. Still, resolve needed action. If I was truly leaving, I had to prepare. Tuesday evening, I transferred my savings into a new account at a West Coast credit union. Wednesday morning, I made the final payment on my student loans, watching the balance tick down to 0. The symmetry nearly brought me to tears, free of their debt, free of mine. Rachel, my best friend since college, helped me box up essentials and stashed them in her garage, her hands working quickly as I explained between gulps of air. They think they can corner me, but I'm not walking into that bank, Rach. Not Thursday. Not ever. She nodded firmly, sliding tape across the last box. Then we'll get you out, whatever it takes. For the first time in weeks, I laughed, small, brittle, but real. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, Gran's letter resting beside my laptop, watching the San Francisco skyline light up on my screensaver as if it were calling me westward. The glow of the city looked like freedom itself. Thursday was their deadline, but Friday was mine, and I intended to take it. Thursday evening, instead of peace, I found myself once again at my parents' house, summoned under the guise of talking things through reasonably. Against my better judgment, I went. Maybe some part of me still clung to the foolish hope that a calm conversation could exist between us. But the moment I stepped into the living room, I froze. Every seat was occupied, Mom and Dad on the couch, Troy and Jessica flanking them like lieutenants. Pastor Williams perched primly on the armchair, Bible resting on his knee. Aunt Cheryl and Uncle Roger leaned forward on the love seat. Even my cousin Stephanie, who just happened to work at the bank, sat stiffly in a chair pulled from the dining room. It wasn't a conversation, it was a tribunal. Troy stood as if presiding, puffed up with self-importance. April, this is an intervention. Because we love you and because your refusal to help Mason is hurting the family. My skin prickled, a hot flush crawling up my neck. Intervention. The word dripped with accusation, twisting me into the villain of their script. Mom dabbed at her eyes with one of her dramatic embroidered handkerchiefs, the kind she always used during her community theater plays. After all we sacrificed for you, she whispered, voice trembling perfectly on cue. How can you turn your back on us now? Sacrificed. The word nearly made me laugh out loud. For 20 minutes, I sat silently while they delivered rehearsed speeches, one after the other. Pastor Williams quoted scripture about duty. Aunt Cheryl talked about the shame spreading through the community. Dad leaned forward, his voice thick with false gravitas. Families stand together. If you keep resisting, you'll fracture us beyond repair. Finally, Troy slammed his hand on the coffee table, rattling the mugs. This isn't about you, April. This is about Mason. Why can't you see that? Something inside me snapped. I stood, my voice low but steady. You're right, Troy. It's never about me. It never has been. The room stilled. I turned slowly, meeting each of their eyes. When I got a full-ride scholarship, Mom told me to set the table. When I begged you to come to my science competition, you skipped it for Troy's scrimmage. When I graduated, you gave me $50 while Troy got a car. I worked every summer since I was 15. I paid every cent of my student loans alone. And you dare sit here and tell me you sacrificed for me. Their faces shifted, Mom's tears faltering, Dad's jaw tightening, Troy flushing with rage. I'm not your backup plan. I continued, heat rising in my chest. I'm not your safety net, and I am done being treated like one. The silence that followed was heavier than any lecture, any guilt, any ambush they had orchestrated. For once, they didn't have a script ready. Troy recovered first, his voice rising. You're selfish, difficult. You've always been. No, I cut in, my voice stronger than I thought possible. I've always been independent. There's a difference, and it's about time you learned it. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in Jessica's eyes. Pastor Williams shifting uncomfortably in his chair, even Aunt Cheryl looking away. The perfect performance of their united front cracked just a hairline fracture, but enough. I turned toward the door, my legs shaking but steady. You can keep your speeches, your shame, your ambushes. I'm not signing. Not now. Not ever. And with that, I left them sitting in their carefully arranged circle scripts, abandoned, eyes-wide silence echoing in the wake of a truth they never wanted spoken. By Friday morning, my resolve had crystallized into something unbreakable. While my parents still expected me to sit at that polished mahogany desk at First Federal Bank alongside Troy and Dad, pen in hand, I was on the opposite coast, $3,000 miles away, standing in a hotel room in downtown San Francisco, staring out at a skyline that glittered like freedom itself. The night before had been a blur of adrenaline and logistics. After leaving the so-called intervention, I'd gone straight to Rachel's garage. Together, we loaded my essentials 2 suitcases, a laptop bag, and the cardboard box with Gran's letter into her car. She hugged me hard before the airport drop-off, whispering, "Go live your life, April. Don't let them script another chapter for you." Her words carried me through the terminal, my heart hammering as if every step risked being caught. I half expected Dad's commanding voice to boom over the loudspeaker, Troy's smug grin to appear at the gate, Mom's tears to streak down the glass. But no one came. Flight 1422 lifted through Massachusetts clouds, and with it 30 years of chains began to snap loose. Now, as I pulled the curtains wider in my hotel room, Pacific sunlight poured across the floorboards. My phone still switched off since boarding lay on the nightstand like a dormant bomb. I wasn't ready to turn it on yet. Instead, I opened my laptop. My inbox pinged with a new message from HR. Congratulations, April. We were impressed by your application. Virtual interview scheduled for tomorrow at 11 a.m. PST. I covered my mouth with both hands, laughter bubbling out in a mixture of relief and disbelief. Tomorrow wasn't a trap. Tomorrow was opportunity. Meanwhile, back in Boston, I knew exactly what was happening. The family gathered at First Federal. Their best clothes ironed, Troy tapping his foot impatiently, Dad glaring at his watch. 10 o'clock came and went. My chair stayed empty. Their plan unraveled in real time, each tick of the clock another blow to their carefully orchestrated ambush. I imagined the scene, the whispers between Mom and Dad, Jessica biting her lip, Mason fidgeting, Troy's anger simmering hotter with every passing minute. And finally, the realization I wasn't coming. I sipped the hotel's weak coffee, savoring the taste of their disappointment from 3,000 miles away. Still, a flicker of fear danced in my chest. They wouldn't let go easily. I knew their playbook, guilt-shame threats escalation. By leaving, I hadn't ended the war, I'd shifted it onto new terrain. But this time I had home court advantage. That night, I sat cross-legged on the bed, Gran's letter beside me, city lights blinking through the window. I reread her words for the 100th time. Your life belongs to you first. For years, I'd believed family was a duty, a burden I was bound to carry no matter how heavy. But now, as I planned my interview notes, as I mapped the next steps of my escape, I realized something that nearly brought me to tears. Duty without love is chains, and I had finally broken mine. Boston could keep its guilt, its gossip, its staged dinners and whispered interventions. I had California. I had freedom, and I wasn't going back. I lasted 2 blissful days before turning my phone back on. The moment it powered up, it vibrated violently in my hand. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, 4 voicemails. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, watching the notifications climb like floodwaters breaching a dam. The first voicemail was Mom's, her voice ragged with fury disguised as grief. "April, where are you? Everyone was waiting at the bank. Your father is humiliated. Mason is heartbroken. Do you really want that on your conscience?" The second was Dad's cold and clipped. "This is unacceptable behavior. You've embarrassed the family. Call me back immediately." The third was Troy, his tone teetering between anger and panic. "If you're doing what I think you're doing, there will be consequences, legal consequences." And then the fourth, softer, trembling Jessica. "I don't agree with how they did this, April, but you can't just run away. At least talk to me." I deleted them all without replying, but the texts were harder to ignore. "Mom, we've reported you missing to the police. Everyone's worried sick." "Dad, your behavior is disgraceful. You need to fix this. Troy, don't think you can hide. We'll find you." For the first time in days, a chill ran down my spine. I pulled open my laptop, searching my folders until I found what I needed: screenshots of their group chat, the one where they had plotted my ambush. She just got her bonus. Dinner Tuesday. She won't see it coming. Proof. Evidence. Next, I dug out the email chain from HR confirming someone in IT had accessed my records without permission. Another piece of the puzzle. Then, almost too perfectly, my phone buzzed again. A private message from Jessica. "I understand why you left. He would have used the money for himself. Please be safe." I froze, staring at the words. Was it a trick, or was she finally admitting the truth? Heart pounding, I typed back, "For gambling debts." A pause. Then 3 dots appeared, vanishing, then reappearing. Finally, yes. The confirmation was both devastating and liberating. They hadn't just wanted me to co-sign for Mason's future. They'd wanted me to clean up Troy's latest mess. The college fund was a cover Mason a pawn in a much bigger con. I sat back in my chair, adrenaline surging. My hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with focus. Because now I had more than suspicion. I had proof, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next few days, while my family stewed back in Boston, I worked quietly. I compiled everything: screenshots, voicemails, the IT report, even pages from my old diary showing the pattern of favoritism. Piece by piece, I built a dossier that told the story they wanted to bury. Every time my phone buzzed with another threat or plea, I ignored it, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing defense. I was preparing for a counterattack, and when it came, they wouldn't see it coming. By the end of the week, I knew it was time. I couldn't keep dodging calls forever, couldn't keep letting them paint me as the selfish villain in a story they had written. I had to take control of the narrative. So I sent a single message to the family group chat I had muted months ago: Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern family video call, all of you together. The responses came within minutes. "Mom, thank you, sweetheart. We'll finally work this out." "Dad, about time. Don't embarrass us again." "Troy, good. We'll end this nonsense once and for all." Let them think this was their victory. Let them believe I was crawling back into line. They didn't know I had spent days assembling a presentation: timelines, screenshots, audio recordings, evidence. For once, I would be the one holding the script. When the call connected Thursday evening, their faces filled the screen in neat little boxes. Dad at the head of their dining table, Mom beside him with tissues at the ready. Troy and Jessica sitting stiffly. Mason visible in the background, confused and restless. Aunt Cheryl, Uncle Roger, Pastor Williams all crammed into the frame like a jury. Dad leaned forward, voice dripping with authority. "April, we've gathered here as a family to address your concerning behavior. I'll be speaking first." My voice was calm, steady, firmer than I'd ever heard it. "And you'll listen." The silence that followed was thick with surprise. Even Dad's brow furrowed curiosity, flickering behind his stern expression. I clicked share screen, and my carefully prepared presentation appeared. 3 months ago, I began. You ambushed me with loan papers demanding I co-sign $40,000 for Mason's college fund. Since then, you've escalated, threatening me, calling my workplace, even reporting me missing. I've documented everything." Troy scoffed, leaning toward the camera. "This is ridiculous. We were trying to help Mason." "Really?" I interrupted. With a click, an audio file played. Troy's unmistakable voice slurred from beer, speaking to his poker buddy. "April's bonus is exactly what I need to clear the tables. Once she signs, I'll worry about Mason's college later." The silence after was deafening. Jessica's head snapped toward Troy, eyes wide with fury. Aunt Cheryl muttered something under her breath. Even Pastor Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I advanced the slide. Screenshots of their group chat appeared, lines of text glowing on the screen. "She just got her bonus. Mom confirmed amount. Dinner Tuesday. She won't see it coming." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's face turned ashen, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Here, I continued, voice sharp as glass, as the IT report showing unauthorized access to my company account, conveniently from the IP address of Lisa Moore, your friend's daughter. The same woman who sends you birthday cards, Mom. Her pearls trembled against her throat as she stammered. I just wanted to." "Invade my privacy," I cut in. "Manipulate me. Corner me with information you had no right to see." The slideshow moved on, pages from my childhood diary scanned and highlighted. "May 15th, Troy got a car. I got $50. September 3rd, missed my competition. Dad said there'd be others." Years of ink documenting a lifetime of favoritism, sacrifice, and visibility. Tears blurred my vision, but my voice stayed steady. "This isn't about one loan. This is about a pattern. Decades of it. I give. Troy receives. You use me when it's convenient, then erase me when it's not." Mom's tears had dried, replaced by something harder, recognition. Dad's shoulders slumped, his bluster-gone silence pressing down on him. "You're twisting everything," Troy shouted, suddenly red-faced. "This is what families do, they help each other." "Like you helped me with my student loans," I shot back. "Like you helped me when I needed a cosigner for my first apartment, no Troy. Help has only ever flowed one direction, and it stops tonight." The room on their end erupted into murmurs, relatives whispering, Jessica glaring daggers at her husband. Aunt Cheryl leaned into frame, voice sharp. "Robert, is this true? That April paid her own way while you covered Troy's expenses?" Dad's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time in my life, he had no words. I leaned closer to the camera, my hands steady on the keyboard. "Here are my terms: 6 months, no contact. After that, we'll reassess. Any attempt to guilt me, manipulate me, or contact my workplace resets the clock. These are the boundaries. Accept them or lose me for good." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Mom, voice trembling, not with performance, but with something raw, whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't see what we were doing." It was the first genuine apology I had ever heard from her. Troy predictably slammed his chair back and stormed out of frame, cursing under his breath. Dad stared at me with something unfamiliar flickering in his eyes. Not love, not approval, but just maybe respect. I hovered my finger over the end call button. 6 months. Your move. And with that, I clicked. The screen went black, leaving only my reflection in the laptop glass. For the first time, I was the one who ended the conversation. The silence in my apartment after I ended the call was unlike any I had ever known. Not the suffocating silence of being ignored, not the tense silence after arguments, but a new kind, liberating, charged, alive. I sat there staring at my blank laptop screen, my own reflection faint in the glass, and realized with startling clarity for the first time in my life, I had held the power. They had expected me to fold. They had expected guilt tears and compliance. Instead, I had turned their ambush into exposure. I had laid their secrets bare in front of each other, in front of relatives who had believed their narrative for years. And when it mattered most, I hadn't faltered. My phone buzzed beside me one more time. A text from Mom, 6 months? I'll wait. My throat tightened, but I didn't reply. Not yet. I closed the laptop and stood pacing my tiny apartment with restless energy. My hands were steady now, but my mind replayed the looks on their faces. Jessica's betrayal flashing across her eyes as she realized the truth about Troy's gambling. Aunt Cheryl's indignation morphing into suspicion at Dad's silence. Even Pastor Williams looking unsettled as though realizing he had lent scripture to a con. I whispered the words again to myself, testing their strength on my tongue. 6 months, no contact. The syllables carried weight but not dread. They carried authority. Later that night, Rachel stopped by letting herself in with the spare key she had always kept. She found me sitting cross-legged on the floor, Gran's letter spread out in front of me, the cardboard box finally empty. "Well," she asked, dropping her purse by the door. I did it. My voice cracked, but I was smiling. I told them no, not just no to the loan. No to all of it. To everything. Rachel's grin spread wide, proud, and fierce. "About damn time." She plopped down beside me and cracked open a bottle of wine. "To boundaries." "To boundaries," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. That night, I slept without nightmares. The days that followed were strange, but steady. My phone still lit up occasionally with attempts and email from Dad, with nothing but weather updates as though pretending everything was normal. A voicemail from Jessica, apologizing again this time without excuses. Even Mason's voice, once shy and uncertain, asking if I'd come to his birthday. I cried after hearing that one, but I didn't break my rule. 6 months meant 6 months. Not because I didn't love him, but because I needed him to see what love looked like when it wasn't chained to manipulation. At work, Margaret gave me a knowing nod after the big video call. She somehow knew I had survived. "Setting boundaries is like surgery," she told me one afternoon, stirring sugar into her tea. "Painful at first, but it saves the patient." I smiled faintly. "What if the patient doesn't want to be saved?" "Then you save yourself," she said simply. Every day I felt lighter. Each morning walk to the lab felt different. My shoulders back, my stride firmer, my smile easier. I didn't check my phone constantly. I didn't flinch when a neighbor said hello. I was learning that boundaries weren't walls to keep people out. They were gates. And for once, I was the one holding the key. By the end of the first month, I noticed something else. The constant pressure in my chest had lifted. My laugh came quicker, easier. And when I thought about Thursday mornings at the bank, I didn't feel dread anymore. I felt freedom. 6 months stretched ahead of me like a promise, not a punishment. And for the first time in my life, I was eager to keep it. 6 weeks later, the fog rolled in from the Pacific as I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in San Francisco. The city stretched below me, alive with a hum that felt nothing like Boston. This place didn't know my family name, didn't carry whispers of what I owed. Here, I wasn't the responsible sister or the family's backup plan. I was just April. My days filled quickly. Work was intense, but fulfilling my new role gave me the kind of recognition I'd never tasted at home. Colleagues sought my input not because they assumed I'd shoulder the burden, but because they respected what I brought to the table. That simple difference made every late-night lab session feel worthwhile. I framed Gran's letter and hung it beside my degrees on the wall above my desk. It wasn't hidden in a box anymore. It was a declaration, a piece of armor I saw every morning before heading into the lab. Weekends became something I had never known before mine. I joined a Saturday morning yoga class in Golden Gate Park where no one asked about my family or what I could do for them. On Sundays, I volunteered at a financial literacy program for women, teaching them the very lessons I had clawed my way through. Watching their eyes light up as they realized they could control their futures gave me a satisfaction no paycheck could buy. Slowly, I built a circle here. Ellie, my downstairs neighbor, invited me for balcony coffee most mornings, never prying when I needed quiet, always ready when I needed company. Margaret flew out for a long weekend to celebrate her retirement, her laughter filling my apartment with a warmth I hadn't realized I missed. Even Rachel managed a visit, bringing with her reminders of where I'd been and encouragement for where I was going. And then there was Eric. We met through the volunteer program, his quiet humor and patient questions a stark contrast to Troy's bluster and Dad's commands. He never pushed, never demanded, simply listened. For the first time, someone's hand in mine felt like invitation, not obligation. But the biggest change was inside me. The guilt that had once knotted my stomach loosened with every sunrise. I no longer replayed their words on a loop in my head. Instead, I replayed my own number 6 months, my terms. That didn't mean the messages stopped. Each month, a letter arrived from Mom. hesitant at first, then increasingly reflective. I never realized how differently we treated you and Troy. I see it now. Dad's silence broke into brief, awkward texts about weather or baseball scores, small cracks in his stone wall. Jessica even sent a quiet thank you for standing up to him. He needed it. I read them all, but I didn't answer. Not yet. 6 months meant 6 months. Instead, I poured my energy into carving a life that was mine alone. Thanksgiving came, and instead of sitting at that old maple kitchen table under Dad's watchful eye, I hosted my own dinner in California. My table wasn't perfect mismatched plates, store-bought pie, but it was filled with people I had chosen. Ellie, Margaret, Rachel, even Eric. There was laughter genuine and unforced, no manipulation hidden behind polite smiles. At one point, I glanced at Gran's letter framed on the wall, catching the words in my periphery, "Your life belongs to you first." And for the first time, I didn't just believe them. I was living them. By the time spring rolled around, 6 months had passed since that fateful dinner. I woke one morning to golden California sunlight streaming through my bedroom curtains, the air crisp with the scent of the ocean drifting in. I patted across the hardwood in my bare feet, coffee in hand, and realized something simple but profound. I hadn't flinched at my phone's buzz in weeks. The boundaries I set had held. My family tried, of course, letters, texts, subtle jabs through distant relatives, but I didn't bend. Every ignored call became a victory. Every unanswered email was proof that I could control my own story. And somewhere along the way, something shifted. My life wasn't defined by resistance anymore. It was defined by creation. At work, I thrived. My projects gained recognition, my manager trusted me with leadership responsibilities, and for once, my effort translated directly into respect. In the evenings, I explored San Francisco with Ellie or shared quiet dinners with Eric. On weekends, I stood in front of a room of women, single mothers, recent graduates, people clawing their way out of debt, and taught them how to manage credit-build savings and claim independence. Every time I saw their eyes widen with understanding, I felt my own scars healing, yet even amid the joy traces of the past remained. Some nights I found myself staring at Gran's framed letter, the edges yellowed with age, whispering her words like a prayer. Your life belongs to you first. It had become my anchor, my compass, my permission slip to exist unapologetically. Around Thanksgiving, I took a step I never thought I would. I opened a savings account in Mason's name. Not out of obligation, not because I was pressured, but because I chose to. A small deposit each month, quietly building toward his future. It was my way of telling him love should be a gift, not a leash. One day, when he was old enough to understand, I would show him. Holidays came and went. Instead of tense family dinners, I celebrated with the people who had become my chosen family. Rachel flew out with a bottle of wine. Margaret visited during her cross-country retirement trip. Ellie baked pumpkin bread. Eric held my hand under the twinkle of Christmas lights strung across my tiny apartment. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Letters from Mom still arrived monthly, each one softer, more vulnerable. The last one ended with words I never thought I'd see. I hope someday we can rebuild. But if not, I understand. I see now what I didn't before. I folded it carefully, sliding it into the same box where Gran's letter once lived. Maybe in time I'd reply, but it would be on my terms, not theirs. On the anniversary of the ambush, I bought myself a cupcake from a local bakery, the same way I had years ago when my scholarship went unnoticed. This time, though, I lit a candle and smiled as I blew it out not for validation, but for freedom. A new tradition, a celebration of choosing myself. Standing on my balcony, the Pacific stretching wide and endless before me, I understood at last, freedom isn't about running away from family. It's about building a life where your love, your money, your energy, everything you are is yours to give freely, not taken by force. And that life, it was mine now, entirely. Your life belongs to you first. Gran's words weren't just advice anymore. They were the foundation I finally stood on.